This is the update on the church Papon in Michigan, and this is Fox 2 Detroit. Yes, Fox 2 Detroit is what I'm using here. Shout out to them.
Multiple victims. The entire church is on fire, and we're working with fire and all those things that happen during active shooter training. This is a dynamic scene.
Who were you with?
Well, I'm not trying to bother you.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
So just to get you up to speed again, we had a person, a 40-year-old from Grand Blanc, who
It is 2 deceased and 8 critical. Is what I'm looking at. Want to know? No, 8 shot and 2 deceased.
drove a vehicle in a truck with 2 American flags in the back. We learned that he is a former service member, and he took that into a church, the Church of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc, crashed it. Witnesses report to Fox News that it sounded like a bomb went off behind the pulpit of the church. There were hundreds of people in there. Service had just started. They were worshiping. They were receiving the sacrament of communion. They were praying. They were singing together, and all of this was disrupted clearly when this gunman had other intentions. So after crashing into the vehicle, crashing into the building, he got out and started shooting. I'm joined now by Steve Doland, former Detroit police officer with many years expertise in law enforcement, to talk about what we're learning and processing this in real time. Steve, what sticks out to you as we kind of are in the early days of this investigation here?
What sticks out to me is a quick response by the officers. Found out earlier that one was a DNR officer,
Yeah.
and one was Grand Blanc Township officer, working as a one-man car. For them to get there within a minute and take charge is really impressive. The DNR officer obviously isn't used to these types of, either one of them are used to a mass casualty event like this with a fire, and for them to take charge right away and neutralize the subject, which is your priority. You got to go in, everyone else is going out. That's what really impressed me. And then obviously all the other departments coming together to help out. Swanson said he was there shortly thereafter. I'm impressed by that. I know the FBI is there.
They are.
I was a little surprised at the press conference that they did not. Usually in those things they tell you the race, gender, and age of the victims. They did not do that. They didn't open up any questions.
Right.
And they didn't really talk about the weapons. But the first response, really impressed. Considering such a small community, very impressed by that.
Yeah, they were there in a matter of seconds. They must have been close by clearly in order to get that call and respond, and then to not hesitate and to just engage in this person. Because as you mentioned, the priority at that point, without knowing anything other than shots had been fired, which I assume was the call that they were responding to, is to neutralize the threat and make sure that there's nobody else is injured or placed in harm's way.
Actually, you get a lot of shots fired runs at night. The run probably came out active shooter,
Yeah.
which means, and we discussed this earlier, all bets are off. We're going in, and that's when you realize your own mortality, because you're going, I'm going to come out of this alive, but I got to help these people. Am I going to see my family? But I have to get in there and focus, and those 2 officers did it and neutralized the subject. They were able to get as many people as they could out, but then they have the fire. So I got to make sure the fire department get in there, because they're not, they don't have weapons, they're not armed. You got to make sure they're safe, EMS is safe. The whole thing, I'm very impressed. For such a small community to come together like that, not in an urban area, very impressive.
Yeah, the fact that this happened at that time of day with all those people in there, and we have so many other contributing factors here. We have the shooting that took place, and then the fire that was subsequently started, and we saw from earlier footage how large that fire was. That only complicates, and here we are seeing some of those images there, that only complicates the response, not knowing what may have started this fire, if the shooter was active by the time first responders are getting on scene. How does one approach that if you're coming into this scene?
Honestly, We're not used to that.
Right.
You're not used to the mass casualty. I mean, in Detroit, we've had people shot, numerous people shot at one time, but not like this, when there's a fire. And the other thing is, most shootings in urban areas happen at night, between 7 night to 3 in the morning, not on a Sunday morning at a house of worship. And even these, and this is reminiscent a little bit of the one in Canton. There was no fire when the guy tried to drive a truck in there and kill these people. So the question now becomes, was it targeting the church? Was it someone in the church specifically he was targeting? What caused him to snap? Because you've seen the truck.
Sorry about that.
One would think that he's very, very patriotic. However, what got to this point to do this? Because this wasn't just right. This was well planned.
Right.
And now they're in Burton, right? Wanting to get in the house, as Camille said, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's where they are.
But they have a search warrant to get in there and do that.
And we've seen a strong presence there too.
Yes.
Bomb squad.
Oh, yeah.
We saw MSP, SWAT team as well, all surrounding, setting a perimeter, because we just don't know what's in that house, and we don't know what else was planned in this attack. And you want to make sure that it's contained to what it is at this moment, right?
Right, because that house is in a community.
Correct.
Okay, so you have to evacuate everybody, and you send your bomb-sniffing dog in there and hope that the house isn't booby-trapped. Because of the explosion, there's a good chance there's an ID in there. You don't want to destroy any evidence that may be in there, like a manifesto, his computer. You're going to get search warrants for his phone, his computer, all social media.
Right.
People might say, well, they got the shooter, it's over. It's not over.
Right.
The
No.
investigation's just beginning.
Yeah.
Who knew about this? Did they tell anybody who pushed him to this? Was he influenced by somebody on social media?
Yeah, did
What-
anybody help him? All of that.
Yeah, and the ramifications go far beyond the people that were in that church, and we feel for each and every one of those families that know somebody who's affected. But the fact is that if there are hundreds of people in that church, there is likely people that know people that are in that church, and all of these people are going to need to process what happened, need time to heal. How does that even begin to happen at this point?
Well, it sounds like they have a couple at the Genesis Center.
Yeah.
They're going to have a vigil.
Right.
But right now, at least publicly, we don't know the names of the individuals who are deceased
Right.
or their casualties, what their injuries are. And this isn't just a single church. This is big in Utah. So this is going to have implications out west. So now,
Yeah.
is there a copycat coming? Is someone targeting a specific congregation or the entire faith? So these are the problems you have to worry about. And then, not just the victims that were inside the church, and like you said, friends of these victims. How about the first responders who are watching kids that are shot?
Right.
It's going to mess up the nurses trying to get there, EMS, the firefighters. Everyone's going to need some mental health.
And we were talking a bit earlier about kind of digging down the rabbit hole to figure out if there was anything leading up to this that may have pointed to that this was coming, that this act was going to be carried out, and kind of the forensics that go on behind that. You have to look at social media. You have to do a deep dive on the person's laptop, or whatever the case may be. All of that has to happen in a coordinated effort. And at what stage in the investigation does that begin?
It'll be started immediately. He's ex-military, so they're going to find out what kind of training he had in the past. Obviously, he didn't just wake up this morning and say, I'm going to put a bomb in my car and drive into a church. He probably did reconnaissance on the church, said this is the way to get in. There are no cement stanchions in front of the church, or I can't get in. This is the time to hit it. Sunday morning, there's not a lot of personnel out, police, because they work 7 nights to 3 in the morning, and that's when you have the most crime. So you're going to have minimal staffing, and in Grand Blanc, how many officers are out on Sunday morning?
Right.
And I don't know how many other agencies responded, but the response from the other units and the fire and the EMS, the sheriff, state, ATF, FBI, it's just, it's sad, but they're all coordinated together. It's good to see.
That is something to coordinate to that scope,
Yeah.
because we heard earlier that 100 or so FBI agents, I mean, and to make sure that everybody is doing what they need to be without stepping on toes to get this expedited as quickly as possible is no easy task.
No, you have an incident command,
Yeah.
and you try to coordinate initially, with the radios, everyone's talking, because you don't want people going in somewhere where it's not safe, officers or fire, whatever. And then after the shooter's neutralized, you call in all your other resources to see if this is a hate crime. We don't know yet. Was it just a person, just something happened with the military that put him over the edge? Obviously, he's been trained, the ID he's got, but he also has a wife and a child.
Right.
So you have to understand, was he going through something personal? And we don't know that. So right from the rip, everyone's doing that. The feds are looking at the hate crime portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but local is looking at, we got to get in there and see what caused this and collect as much evidence as they can. Talk to as many witnesses as you can, because if you don't, they're going to talk to, their neighbors, and you're not going to get a true story.
Right, we need it as fresh as possible.
Right.
Time is of the essence in all of this, in all the fact gathering. And we talked about the fact that, you could do everything you want to try and prevent something like this from happening, but
Yeah.
it's a futile effort. If somebody's got a truck and they're willing to drive it into a church and get out with a rifle and start firing.
We talk about
Exactly.
that. And some security experts say, if you do this, I don't want to hear that.
Right.
Because if I'm hell-bent on taking people out, I'm going to do it. Because I'm not going to live. And we've seen this in too many instances where someone goes in, and I've told you this before.
Yeah.
They can shoot the president, they can shoot the pope. They have all kinds of security, but we're human. And you can be distracted. And the other thing about this is, when you're first responding, is there another shooter? Is there another person with a bomb? Is there another church going to be hit? All these things are going through your mind, incident command, and these are everything you're looking at after the launch. There's so many intangibles. The fire.
Yeah.
This guy knew what he was doing, and unfortunately, the government trained him how to do it.
Yeah. Steve Dolan, thank you so much for that unique perspective on things. We're going to talk about this now. The theories that are reacting to another mass shooting in Michigan. Governor Gretchen Whitmer issued a statement on X. Let's read it now. It says, "My heart is breaking for the Grand Blanc community. Violence anywhere is unacceptable. I am grateful to first responders who took action quickly. We will continue to monitor this situation and hold the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc close," end quote. We also have this, Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonough reacting as well. First, let me read you what Donald Trump is saying. "The suspect is dead, but there is still a lot to learn. This appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians in the United States of America. The Trump administration will keep the public posted, as we always do. In the meantime, pray for the victims and their families. The epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately." Okay, we're going to continue our team coverage and go back to Camille Amiri with this live report. Camille, what are you doing?
Yeah, so we just want to recap the press conference that was at 5 o'clock. I know we brought it to you live, but some people may just be joining us now. It was a very brief press conference. They did not take any statements, but they laid out the timeline, which I think is so crucial to everything that happened. Police say that 10:25, the shooter drove his truck into the church and got out and started shooting. They say within 32 seconds, 2 officers were on scene. Now, they go into specifics. They didn't say if the officers
Damn good
were
response time.
inside the church or if they were nearby. We know one of them was a DNR officer, one was a Grand Blanc officer. We don't know if they were parishioners. They really didn't go into any detail on that front, and they didn't let us ask any questions. But we do know that by 10:33, so we're talking about 8 minutes later, the suspect was neutralized according to police. That suspect, police have identified as 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford out of Burton. 10 people shot total, not including the suspect. We've confirmed 2 deceased, 7 in stable condition, 1 in critical. Now, of course, we know that there was a huge explosion and a 4-alarm fire. They are still trying to determine if there are still people, if there are victims who did not make it out of the church. There were more than 100 people in there worshiping this Sunday morning when this happened. Obviously, this is the last thing that they thought was ever going to happen. And as far as the suspect goes, when we were at outside his home in Burton, where they were getting ready to execute search warrants and make sure determine what they would find in there, obviously, as you heard Steve Dolan say, that you have to be very careful because is his house booby trapped? We don't know. Are there explosives? When we were there, they were putting the drone up to kind of figure things out, but they were very methodical when we were over there, not going inside, but a very large presence at his home, which is outside Burton, which is about, I would say, about 12, 13 minutes away from the church. People, though, were figuring out before they released who this person was. I mean, Burton is a small town, so people were talking, and there were a lot of people. We weren't releasing his name yet because it wasn't confirmed by police or by sources, but people knew him. People were like, yeah, I know him. My kid knows his kid. He was involved in his kid's sporting events. I think they said he was possibly a baseball coach. They said this was a nice guy, quiet. When we try to figure out why these things happen, what drives this person to it, often the MO doesn't fit. Everybody we talked to, once we determined where he lived on Atherton in Burton and who he was, people were like, I know him, he's a nice guy, he's in the Marines, he's quiet, neighbors never had any problems with him. So what prompted this? That's the $1 million question. I know that there are dozens of FBI agents here in Grand Blanc interviewing all of the people who saw things, who heard things. There were so many people inside that church. We did go to the reunification center, which is down the street from where everything happened, but we were told that we needed to keep our distance because obviously not everyone is accounted for. So when you think about how many people were in that church and that there are likely people who didn't get out, I mean, this was a massive fire. We saw chopper video. This was a massive explosion. People said they thought it was a bomb that went off. So this was a very calculated effort. And, right now I spoke with a friend who knows someone who was in that church. It's somewhere in this community, somebody knows somebody who is somehow connected to this tragedy. And it's horrible to wrap your head around. We have seen gun violence over and over again, and why this happened, there's no answer. There's no logical answer. So we're going to have another press briefing at 8 o'clock tonight here at the police department, and we will bring you, obviously take it out to you. I think we'll be bringing that to you live, if not on Fox 2, at least on Fox Local, which is our app that you can download at any time. Of course, we're going to be continuing our coverage throughout the night, but just a horrible, horrible tragedy, and our hearts, of course, go out to everybody who the victims and who witnessed this, and of course law enforcement who you heard Steve Nolan say they are rushing in, the firefighters rushing in to try and save people and try and figure out who's still in there, and this is going to be obviously an active scene for several more hours. I'll send it back to you.
Camille, thank you for that live report. We know you have been in multiple locations and were able to give us a pretty good description of the house. I know it was off a 2-lane highway, and the sheer police presence you saw when you went out there to watch them, what we believe to be is executing a search warrant on the shooter's home at that time, right? I mean, we saw SWAT trucks and bombs.
Yeah.
Go ahead and describe that a little bit for us.
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, we were at the can't even talk. I'm sorry. We were at the reunification center when we got a tip that they were going to this location, right? And this is believed to be the shooter's home. So we rushed over there, and as we were getting there, I mean, there was already a SWAT team, but there was a huge bomb squad truck come in after we got there, and then another one. And like I said, I mean, we were there for a couple hours, but you never saw them go in because they know what happened at the church, and they've determined that this was the person, according to police, who did this. They've determined that this is his house. What's inside the home, they can't risk going in and
because you don't know if
setting off a bomb.
if it's set up or not.
We have to always think worst case scenario. So, like I said, we didn't see a very large police presence and a ton of media there, obviously, and then also too, the fact that there were so many people who have been following this story. There was one person who was watching our live stream who was watching everything unfold as we were talking about it. Everybody, like I said, seems to know somebody who's somehow connected to this in Burton or in Grand Blanc. So what I was told was that this was going to be in Burton. Obviously, that's going to be going on for a long time, that scene. And then obviously the scene is still active at the church. That will be an active scene probably for a couple of days, I'm guessing. But just trying to figure out, the motive and what was the weapon used and where is that weapon. And, there's a lot of unanswered questions that we just don't just don't know.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have those answers at 8 o'clock when they give us the latest update. Camille and Mary, thank you for that. We're going to take it to Jessica now, but before we do that, I want to mention that we have learned that one of the victims who was killed is a man in his 70s who we've learned is a veteran. Jessica Dubnag now live in Burton at the shooter's house. We were just talking with Camille about this. We understand that scene has kind of grown and evolved over time. What's happening right now, Jess?
Yeah, we picked up the baton where Camille left off, and I can't say that there has been a lot of changes. I want to get out of the way, show you what's going on behind me. Who we have here right outside the shooter's home, Michigan State Police in heavy presence, their bomb squad, their emergency support team, that is their SWAT team. Now you'll see a vehicle, a black sort of bomb squad vehicle, that is right in front of the shooter's home. Now this is a very slow-paced situation out here, and the reason for that is when you're talking about a shooter like this who strategically planned what he allegedly planned earlier today. You're talking about somebody who is a veteran, who served in combat overseas. This is somebody who's very familiar with weapons, especially IEDs, those improvised explosive devices that we found at the church earlier today. Now, police on scene here, they have to assume that inside the shooter's home, it could possibly be booby trapped. Who knows if there's other folks inside. Now, we did talk to neighbors out here, and they gave us some information about this shooter. They say that he is a husband, he has a wife, and he has a young son. Now, we talked to different neighbors here who have different sort of interpretations of this shooter. One man we talked to said he was a nice guy, said he's bought firewood from him in the past, said that he would go around plowing people's driveways for free in the neighborhood here in Burton. Now, another guy we talked to sort of described him as somebody you wouldn't want your daughter, your sister to date, or somebody that's like a survivalist kind of type. So we're getting different accounts of what the shooter is. At this point, it's all speculation. Now, in terms of the scene and the operation that's on the ground right now, it's moving at a very, very slow pace. Now, what I do know, I spoke to sources with the ATF. They handle big-scale explosive situations. They're also kind of manning the higher-up operation as we are concerned potentially of explosives being inside the shooter's home. So we have not seen much movement at all. That black vehicle that I mentioned, sort of that tactical vehicle, has repositioned a couple of times. But sort of the mood out here, it seems like a waiting game, a holding pattern. That might be because so many of law enforcement, or so much of law enforcement, is tied up at the church right now, sort of securing that scene. This has become kind of a secondary level of importance. So we will continue to monitor the scene. It doesn't seem incredibly urgent at this point in time. It does seem like they're in a holding pattern. As you heard my colleague Camille and Mary say, that they're probably going to be out here late into the night. And as we said, we have to be concerned about secondary explosive devices and that kind of thing. And that is how the utmost caution in which law enforcement is operating right now. Dave, I'm going to send it back to you.
Jessica, thank you very much for that. We'll let you get back to work. Right now, bear with me as I put on speakerphone Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard is joining me. He's kind enough to call in to give us a little perspective. Sheriff, for better or worse, you've been in a situation like this before here in Oakland County. Help us kind of put into perspective what's going on out in Genesee County tonight.
Yeah, sadly, too many times, not only Oxford, but we went to MSU and we had the splash pad. So this is our fourth scene we've responded to in 5 years. So yeah, obviously a lot of legwork's going on. We have a lot of resources there. We sent resources and we went there when it was happening. And we have special units there assisting with different things, our drones, arson, bomb dogs, all those kinds of assets. So typically what happens is everybody floods in the assets that are needed, depending on how the investigation or the situation is unfolding, stay or expand. And that's what's happening now. They're obviously doing secondary locations and trying to determine a host of things, motive and things like that.
Yeah, I guess at this point in the investigation, now that we're some hours in, where does the priority lie? Obviously, we had the shooting, the fire, and then a secondary scene in Burton.
Well, you've got to make sure that every potential location is safe. So, if you go back through time, some of the situations where mass shooters start, sometimes they start.
Now, I know the church was set on fire. Question is, Was it an explosive that set on fire, or did he set on fire himself after or before he starts shooting? Cause this guy here did a lot.
At their home. So the Sandy Hook shooter, for example, killed his mother. And sometimes you'll have secondary crime scenes or secondary evidentiary scenes. So Burton would be his home, and they got to see if there's either evidence of a crime scene there or evidence related to the crime he committed at the church. And so, to make sure that they follow the trail wherever it goes and make sure no one else is involved. It doesn't appear at this point anyone is. And so they just have to really do things by the number at this point.
Federal law enforcement, we heard upwards of 100 FBI agents. We heard members of ATF. When they descend on the scene, how does one kind of train for that sort of response of that scale? Who kind of takes the lead, and how are things kind of divvied up at that point?
Well, so it kind of depends on the situation. So, for example, at Oxford, we're a very large agency, so we have a host of assets, including our own crime lab and things like that. So we didn't need that outside help. In this venue, they will need an outside crime lab. They'll need other things that maybe that agency doesn't have. Typically, unless there's a nexus to some national terrorism or something else, the lead would be the local agency, in this case Grand Blanc Township, and everyone else would assist. So again, going back to Oxford, the FBI offered anything and everything, and I said what we could really use was exactly what you heard them mention, a lot of agents to talk to all of the potential witnesses, because everyone that's there has to be interviewed. Even if they didn't see or hear anything, you have to make sure.
Right.
And so that's where having other agencies flood in and asking how they can help is really super important and helpful.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that everybody has a story to tell that was involved in this, and that's a lot of stories to coordinate and kind of sift through and piece together what's relevant and what isn't. You also have the back-end investigation where you kind of dive down what was said on social media. Was anyone else made aware of this that he possibly was talking to? How is that part of the investigation handled at all?
I'm sorry, it broke up for a minute.
Just wondering how they dive into possible other people that may have been aware, any sort of breadcrumbs that may have been to act on.
Yeah, and that's things that typically, if you look at every scenario, all the mass shooters or mass casualty things I've studied from around the world, someone saw or heard something in advance. And there's an inflection point where you can interrupt it from happening. And oftentimes that is seen or heard, but not shared widely. And so that will be part of the investigation.
Yeah, somebody had to know whether or not if this guy was off for something.
Did they have foreseeable knowledge that he was going to do that? All of those kinds of things will be part of the investigation to determine why this happened without anyone, having an opportunity to stop it in advance. Because more than likely, as I said, every situation, someone sees or hears something that's concerning and it's not shared in a robust way. And that's the biggest way we can get in front of these before they happen and stop them. We've done that in our agency, and we've seen it around the country where information is robustly shared. We've prevented situations like this, and that's why we encourage people constantly. If you see something that's concerning or hear something that's concerning, please share it, because we'd rather check out 1,000 nothings than miss one real deal.
Yeah, because this could be obviously the results as we kind of sort through just the scope of this. Any parting words that you have as kind of investigators? I know that it's just as troubling for every one of those officers and first responders as it is for everybody in that community there.
Yeah, the final thing I would mention to everybody, even if you're not there, it affects people in so many different ways and capacities. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. We say to our people all the time, asking for help is strength, not weakness. Please do that. Whether you're a first responder, a community member, or someone that just watched this unfold on TV and it's affecting you deeply, and it does so many people. ask for help, talk, work through it, have a process so you can understand what you're feeling and how to, deal with those thoughts and feelings in a healthy processing way.
Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard, thank you so much for adding your perspective on this. Thank you again. All right. Our team coverage continues now. I'm going to go to my colleague here on the weekend, Hillary Golston, who was en route to one of the vigils that is supposed to take place this evening. Hillary, I see you're in Grand Blanc there. What's happening?
Walking is everything to me. Hip surgery became unavoidable.
At a hospital site right now. We might have to move, as a matter of fact, in just a matter of moments. So we've been trying to verify where these victims have gone to, which hospital systems, and I've been talking to people who are part of the medical community working this scene and working, obviously, to ensure, hopefully...
And from what I hear about, what I hear about Detroit is hospital-wise, that Henry Ford is supposed to be a pretty good one.
That those victims who are in stable condition remain that way. Now, what we understand is that the victims went to multiple locations, possibly McLaren, possibly Hurley, and what they're doing right now is shoring up the amount of blood supply they have, the O-negative blood supply. I talked to somebody who actually works in one of the labs, and they're working with the Red Cross right now to ensure that they have access to that. Now, the other thing that's important is that some of these victims may have been moved because they're going to want them to be at a Trauma 1 location so that their trauma surgeons can treat these victims. I know that it looks like hospital staff is asking us security here to move, so we're probably going to have to cut this short. But the other thing I can tell you is this is traumatic, right?
Very.
We could have been worshiping in this area at this time. I mean, we have gone to church services in Grand Blanc. We live out this way. And, so many members of the Metro Detroit community certainly were at church, in church, as this was happening.
Yeah.
And it really just shakes everyone because people should feel safe.
I myself was even in church at this time. Not here, but in my state.
Where they're going to worship. In fact, when I got the news, I just turned my phone back on from coming out of our own Sunday services and realizing this. And I had to ask my husband, who is a medical professional who worked in this area, right in Grand Blanc, where the shooting happened is like literally a few miles from where he was working. And he said, I can't even imagine the fear and the trauma that those people experienced when this attack and fire occurred. We also had a chance to speak with Ken Gray, who's a former FBI special agent, about what the data collection will look like. And I know you heard from Sheriff Mike Bouchard and also from Steve Doolent as well for their expertise. We're going to give you some more of that information. They're looking at as security is right now, so we're going to move to a different location. But certainly we'll have some more information from what the former FBI special agent had to say about this and what he believes will be very critical in the investigation, especially what happens next in understanding what the potential motivation will be. And he felt very, very, very certain that it's a bad idea to jump to any conclusions about what may have motivated this attack at this point. It's going to take time for investigators to figure that out. And I think all of us need to keep that in mind. And the most important thing, if you have potentially upwards of 100 FBI officials coming here working with the ATF, working with a local sheriff, working with a local police department, there's a lot of data that they're going to be going through, a lot of evidence that they're going to be going through, and that's going to be key. Obviously, of course, looking at the suspect's laptop, looking at access to his digital footprint and what he may have been doing online. All of those things will be very important and key. So we'll hope to have an update on many of those things, hopefully very soon. We're going to reposition and come back to you at a later time.
Hillary, thank you. We're going to check in with you as you get in that new position. She was outside of a hospital there where we know many of the ones that were injured, that were shot, were taken to various hospitals who had to be on standby in order to treat people of various injuries. We're also getting reaction to today's mass shooting from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It reads, quote, We are deeply grateful for the outpouring of prayers and concern from so many people all around the world. In moments of sorrow and uncertainty, we find strength and comfort through our faith in Jesus Christ. Places of worship are meant to be sanctuaries of peacemaking prayer and connection. We pray for peace and healing for all involved, end quote. It's a very sad scene that we're seeing here, and as we continue to process it, we're going to check back in now with Camille and Mary, who's got some more information for us. Camille. I believe Camille's shot is apparently frozen. So once that gets situated, we'll be able to check back within her. So we're told that several nurses that were on strike rushed in to help after hearing news of the shooting. Let's hear from one of those nurses and their story right now.
I was down in Detroit at the time, but there were ER nurses, there were other staff that were currently on strike, that know that hospital, that know how that hospital works, that can provide the care that they needed at this time. It was a mass casualty. They needed the help. They needed all hands on deck, and they were pushing the nurses that were on strike away. They would not let them enter the building. We rushed here immediately because we wanted to offer our help. This is, again, our community. This is who we are fighting for. And
Wow.
It's not just this community. It's
a mass incident, whole bunch of people hurt, 2 people deceased, and the people who can actually help out, they pushed them away because they chose to strike. America at work, people.
all of nursing, it's all of healthcare. This should never happen. Why are our babies, why are our churches and schools, why are we being targeted like this? I arrived a little bit late. My coworkers were there. They said they did as much as they could. And, you know, anything a nurse can do, what is that? Show love, give a hug, assist that family member that's crying, that doesn't know what's going on, that maybe doesn't know where their family member's at. Anything that we could offer, like nurses do, we were there for that.
All right, that was Ingrid Kelly reporting, interviewing a nurse over there. Now we believe we have Camille back. Let's check back in with her to see what information we can right now.
Yeah, we're still at the police department. There was a press conference, a very, very brief press briefing here at 5 o'clock. There were a lot of law enforcement officers here from many different agencies, but they did not take any questions. And they're literally, I think that press conference lasted like 2 minutes. And what they did of course confirm was what we've all been hearing throughout the day, but then now confirmed: the suspect, 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford, out of Burton. We spent much of our afternoon outside of his home, where police were waiting, determining when it was safe to go in. I know my colleague Jessica Dubnak is still there right now at this point. But of course, so many questions come to mind. Why this happened? What was the motivation? Like Hillary said, we can't speculate what weapons were used, what, you know, this was obviously a very planned attack. So as far as the ammunition goes, as far as the explosive goes, I mean, we do not often respond to 4 alarm fires. Those are not common. So obviously this was something that took a lot of meticulous planning, and thankfully there were officers within 32 seconds who were able to get in there and able to neutralize the threat, as police would say, at 10:33 a.m. They say that it was 10:25 when police say Thomas Jacob Sanford drove into the church. Now, and then got out and started opening fire. The explosion that people talk about saying it sounded like it was a bomb going off. Now, what we have not been able to determine, and I'm hoping at 8 o'clock we'll learn, is if he had any connection to this church. So Burton is about 10 to 15 minutes from Grand Blanc. I think it took us 12 minutes to get to his location, to the outside his home, what police say is his home. So why this Church of Latter-day Saints? Why this community? What was the motivation? I did talk to people out at the scene who said that they didn't know
why a
he,
church,
he was not a member.
and why
they
these
don't know
people?
That he necessarily had any connection to this church. I did talk to someone who said that his kids are friends with his son. As you heard my colleague Jessica Dubnak say, he is married. He does have a young son who have heard from multiple people that he's very involved in that son's sporting events. Neighbors said that he was quiet, that they never had any issue with him. So it's just, obviously, it is so early on in the investigation where police are trying to determine why this happened, what was the motivation, and obviously, was there anyone else involved? Did anyone, as you heard Sheriff Bouchard talk about from Oakland County, was there anybody who knew anything? Were there any warning signs at all? There are so many law enforcement agencies who are taking everything apart right now. As you've heard throughout the day, FBI is here in full force, upwards of 100 agents. They have so many people that they have to interview. If you think about how many people were inside that church, it's a very large congregation. This was during an hour of worship. It's Sunday morning. You think about how many people here. It was beautiful weather. There was no reason why anyone would stay home. It wasn't raining. It wasn't snowing. Nothing like that. So a lot to unfold on this. Again, a press conference in about 2 hours at 8 o'clock. We're really hoping to learn more information because, like I said, I think this 5 o'clock briefing was just to confirm the name of the suspect. It had been out for hours, but they just wanted to confirm who this person was, who police say was responsible. And of course, this threat neutralized about 8 minutes after the shooting and after the driving in of the church with the explosives. So a lot more to unfold. I just think that as the hours go by, we're going to be learning more and more. But we do know again, 10 people, this is not including the suspect, but we know 10 people were shot. 2 have confirmed deceased, and then 7 we're hearing are stabilized, and then we're hearing 1 is in critical condition. You heard my colleague Hillary Golston talk about how they're possibly at different hospitals, and you heard about obviously the loss of blood, that many people, if you're shot, you're going to lose a lot of blood very quickly. So that's another concern. And then another concern too that of course we have to keep in mind is that we've been hearing early on that there may have been people trapped inside the church who couldn't get out, and that the fire was so bad that they may not have been able to make it out. So that's still another open-ended question. But for now, we are going to send it back to you, and we'll be with you guys throughout the night.
Thank you, Camille. I know that we've all been covering this for so many hours now, and there's just so much to comprehend. It's just a chaotic scene that we're not used to seeing. Even the fact that this was a shooting and then a fire and then a third scene where they were carrying out a warrant. After the call went out this morning, though, officers were on the scene within 25 seconds. And less than 8 minutes later, the shooter was dead, giving us an update with police about the situation. That happened an hour ago. Here's what the chief had to say about that.
That suspect is a 40-year-old male from the city of Bergen, who we identified as Thomas Jacob Sanford. That's Thomas Jacob Sanford, S-A-N-F-O-R-D. Currently where we're at, an update, I gave you 10 victims who were victims of gunshot. Since then, we have 2 victims who are now deceased. One additional one had died at a local hospital. And again, that suspect is deceased as well. 7 other victims at this time are in stable condition. 1 is in critical condition. I know that our community is hurting right now, and we want to provide some resources for our community moving forward. At the Genesis Athletic Club in Grand Blanc for Monday and Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. we will have services for the community. From Wednesday to Friday, those services will be available to our community at the Grand Blanc Senior Center.
Please stay with Fox 2 for continuing coverage of the church shooting in Grand Blanc. There'll be another press conference, as you heard, at 8 p.m. We will keep you updated online and Fox Local on air. We're going to take a short break and then stay with us. Our live coverage continues when we return for Fox 2 News 6.
They supposed to, they said they're going to come back at 8. I may or may not come back at 8. I don't know. If I do come back, I will come back. If not, I'll just update you guys tomorrow. With that being said, like, share, subscribe. I'll see y'all later. Peace.